Hello friends, today we will discuss about Dryden, the father of English criticism. Okay, Dryden. The claim of Dryden considered. The claim of Dryden considered. Dr. Johnson says Dryden may be properly considered as the father of English criticism. Is the writer who first taught us to determine upon principles the merit of composition. There were a few criticisms before Dryden, like Sidney and Johnson, but they wrote on matters which interested them. They did not write on all the problems connected with it. Dr. Johnson thinks that before Dryden critical principles were in the hands of a few who had gathered them partially from the ancient and partly from the Italian and the French. The structure of dramatic poems was then not generally understood. Audiences applauded by instinct, and poets, perhaps often pleased by chance. Dryden is the first English critic who took to criticism seriously and thought deeply over all the problems connected with literature. Though his criticism is also scattered, he was written on almost all the literary problems like the nature and function of poetry, dramatic art and allied problems, epic satire, translations, respective merits of rhyme and blank verse, the other harmony of prose and criticism itself. Besides the theoretical criticism, we have had judicial criticism also. Next, Dryden's liberalism. The most important quality of Dryden as a critic is his liberal outlook on literature. He lived at a time when people relied completely on the classical rules. Dryden himself admired the ancient writers and accepted many of their principles, but he was never a servile imitator and changed the classical rules when either he did not agree with them or found them unfit for modern conditions. B. Kerr says his virtue is that in a time when literature was pestered and cramped with formulas, he found it impossible to write otherwise than freely. His skeptical, tentative, disengaged were most of his contemporaries, and most of his successors for 100 years are pledged to certain dogmas and principles. David Datchis also appreciates his free judgment and says that his changing tastes and interests helped to make him responsible to different kinds of literary skill and of artistic conventions. Next is the French influence. The most important influence on English criticism at this period was that of the French critics like Saint Evremond and the French dramatist Corneille. Dryden's greatness as a critic consists in the fact that he makes a discriminating use of all influences and always adds something of his own. In this respect, Atkins says the advance thus mode was due in some measure to contemporary French influences, to that of Corneille in his earlier period, to Rapin, Volusius Longinus, and Saint Evremond in his later years. What, on the other hand, he assimilated were these influences which found a response in his own nature and temperament. The free critical spirit fostered by Cornel, Longinus, and Saint Evremond. For instance, Aristotle's Sand doctrine presented anew by Rapin and Dacier. Next hymn, historic sense. Dryden is the first English critic to make use of the historical method of criticism. He regarded literature as a mirror of the society, reflecting the characteristics of that age. The literature of each nation depends on the temper, genius, climate of the nation, and therefore we should not judge the literature of one country with the rules of another. He says it is not enough that Aristotle has said so, for Aristotle drew his models of tragedy from Sophocles and Euripides, and if he had seen ours might have changed his mind, or again he says, what pleased the Greeks would not satisfy an English audience. Next, a comparative criticism. There is a special method of Dryden, the comparative method of criticism, when he wants to analyze the merits and demerits of any writer. He places him in comparison with some other ancient or modern writer. In this way, he is able to judge that writer in a better way. Referring to the comparative method of Dryden, George Sainsbury says, by the time there was assembled a real magnificent body of modern letters, in addition to classical and medieval, but nobody in the late 17th century except Dryden really utilized it. He cannot really take an author in hand, whether he is Greek or Latin, Italian or French or English, without his superiority to rules and systems and classifications appearing at once. However, he may drag these in as an afterthought, or rather drew them into the conversation with his usual adroitness. Dryden's method of comparative criticism was something new in the history of English criticism. The best examples of his comparative criticism are the comparison between Shakespeare and Ben Jonson in the essay of dramatic poetic, and between Homer and Virgil, between Ovid and Chaucer, between Chaucer and Boccaccio in the preface of the Fables. Next, the limitation of Dryden as a critic. Will all these merits limitations have also been noted in Dryden as a critic? It has been pointed out that his inconsistent verbiage, imperfect knowledge, and sometimes gives too much concession to tradition and classical authority. Dr. Johnson was the first critic to note the limitation of Dryden. Johnson points to inconsistency in his attitude to rhyming plays and his lack of scruple and even logic in refuting hostile critics, or again in defending some license of his own. In addition, there were occasional inaccuracies in his statements, as when he referred to the tragedy of Queen Gorboduus or credited Champagne with employing Alexandrians in his humor. The truth was, so Johnson explains, he was possessed of no very profound learning despite appearances to the contrary, his critical doctrine being largely acquired in ordinary converse and tend to account via wise selection, shrewd thinking, and experience. There are many things that are antiquated or conventional in his discussion of literacy principles. He had his share of the literary pedantry of his age. His opinions are sometimes encumbered by the respect which he feels himself bound to pay to established authorities, and sometimes he condescends to hack work and completion, as for instance in much of the essays on satire and on epic poetry. Achievements, and in the final estimate of him they cannot detract in age of changing critical values. But still he kept up the balance of mind and placed criticism on a high and sound footing for the guidance of future generations. T.S. Eliot says that the great achievement of Dryden as critic is that at the right moment he became conscious of the necessity of affirming the native element in literature and blended the English accent with the French accent. Dryden is the first English critic to make use of the historical method of criticism. Okay, thank you for watching.